Cal Drogo is an aggressive brute that not only sexually assaults a 13-year-old girl, but actively leads and supports a way of life that is built off of the backs of slaving, pillaging, sexually assaulting women, and absolute domination. And yes, I am very aware that he is a product of his environment, and that he is just buying into the Dothraki culture and tradition. But that doesn't stop me from judging and analyzing his way of life, and understanding that it is inherently toxic and abusive. The first issue that I have with Cal Drogo is the way in which he contributes to the death and destruction of countless individuals by virtue of being at the head of a Khalasar. The Dothraki culture is one of blood and conquest. Wherever they ride, they first destroy crops and the land by having their thousands of horses pummel the land till the only thing that's left is mud and dust. Beyond that, since the Dothraki are a nomadic culture, they have no reason to keep cities intact, so whenever they raid, the destruction of a city is likely to follow. That is why the area of land that they reside in is called the Dothraki Sea, or the Haunted Lands. It's a large portion of land that only has one major city, which is Vaes Dothrak, and the reason that's the only city in this massive portion of the continent is because they have burned the rest to the ground. Granted, this is not all Cal Drogo's fault, since he didn't cause all of the mass destruction across the sea, but it's important to note that in the main series, he chooses to agree with the customs that have been a part of the Dothraki culture, following and perpetuating this toxic cycle of bloodshed that is the Dothraki way of life. The most unfortunate example of this happens in Daenerys 7, A Game of Thrones, after Khal Drogo's Khalasar beats Khal Drogo's, then takes the town from the Lhazarene. Dany notes that Dothraki hooves had torn the earth and trampled the rye and lentils into the ground, while Araks and arrows had sown a terrible new crop and watered it with blood. Dying horses lifted their heads and screamed at her as she rode past. Wounded men moaned and prayed. Jack-O-Ran moved among them, the mercy men with their heavy axes, taking a harvest of heads from the dead and dying alike. After them would scurry a flock of small girls, pulling arrows from the corpses to fill their baskets. Last of all, the dogs would come sniffing, lean and hungry, the feral pack that was never far behind the Khalasar. The town was afire, black plumes of smoke rolling and tumbling as they rose into a hard blue sky. Beneath broken walls of dried mud, riders galloped back and forth, swinging their long whips as they herded the survivors from the smoking rubble. The women and the children of Ogo's Khalasar walked with a sullen pride, even in defeat and bondage. They were slaves now, but they seemed to not fear it. It was different with the townsfolk. Dany pitied them. She remembered what terror felt like. Mothers stumped along with blank, dead faces, pulling sobbing children by the hand. There were only a few men among them, cripples and cowards and grandfathers. Across the road, a girl no older than Dany was sobbing in a high, thin voice as a rider shoved her over a pile of corpses, face down, and thrust himself inside her. Other riders dismounted to take their turns. That was the sort of deliverance that Dothraki brought the Lamb Men. "I am the blood of the dragon," Daenerys Targaryen reminded herself as she turned her face away. She pressed her lips together and hardened her heart and rode on. Now, this is a very important time to mention that the men doing this are Cal Drogo's men, not Cal Drogo's. And the next portion of this chapter will explain what is going on more in depth. Most of Drogo's riders fled, Ser Jorah was saying. Still, there may be as many as 10,000 captives. Slaves, Dany thought. Khal Drogo would drive them downriver to one of the towns on Slaver's Bay. She wanted to cry, but she told herself that she must be strong. This is war, and this is what it looks like. But after Daenerys makes the men stop assaulting the young girl, she asks Khal Drogo to make the men stop moving forward. And he has this to say. This is the way of war. These women are our slaves, now to do with as we please. So with all that being said, not even considering the fact that he himself has sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl personally many times, which we will be getting to soon, Khal Drogo is a brutal and deplorable man. A man for who over 20 years has taken part and led in the sexual assault of thousands of women, the destruction of dozens of cities, and the deaths of countless people. He's also a slaver. And for those of you who somehow still aren't convinced, let me read off his master plan to take the Seven Kingdoms. And to Rhaego, son of Drogo, the stallion who will mount the world. To him I also pledge this gift. To him I will give this iron chair, his mother's father sat in. I will give him 7 kingdoms. I, Drogo, Khal, will do this thing. His voice rose, and he lifted his fist to the sky. I will take my Khalasar west to where the worlds end, and ride the wooden horses across the black salt water as no Khal has done before. I will kill the men in the iron suits and tear down their stone houses. I will assault their women, take their children as slaves, and bring their broken gods back to Vaes Dothrak to bow down beneath the Mother of Mountains. This I vow. I, Drogo. These are not the words of a good man, but the words of a brutal and cruel man who only knows one way of life: war. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the far more personal reason that I hate Khal Drogo. That being his sick and abusive relationship with Daenerys Targaryen. Starting off with the super weird age gap. Daenerys in Book 1 is 13 years old. Khal Drogo is in his 30s. He could, very realistically, be her father. This is so incredibly weird, gross, and just indefensible. But there's more. Moving forward, a lot of people give Khal Drogo way too much credit for his wedding night with Daenerys. Now, in the TV show, he just assaults her immediately. But in the books, he just sits there and waits until Daenerys embraces him and consents to having sex with him. And while a lot of people view this as a moment in favor of Khal Drogo, I really don't. First things first, I don't personally believe a 13-year-old can consent to having a sexual relationship with a man 20 years older than her. Especially when there is a power dynamic at play. Sure, I guess it's nice that Drogo didn't immediately just have his way with her, but at the end of the day, this was a reality that Daenerys was going to have to face one way or another. Because if she didn't have sex with him, she would be in an even more unfavorable situation than she's currently in. And for those of you rushing to the comments to defend him in this moment, can you defend the fact that after the initial intercourse, he never cares if she consents ever again? Even when he knows it's actively causing her pain? Because in Daenerys 3, she has this to say. Yet every night, sometime before the dawn, Drogo would come to her tent and wake her in the dark, to ride her as relentlessly as he rode a stallion. He always took her from behind, Dothraki fashion, for which Dany was grateful. That way her lord husband could not see the tears that wet her face, and she could use her pillow to muffle her cries of pain. When he was done, he would close his eyes and begin to snore softly, and Dany would lie beside him, her body bruised and sore, hurting too much for sleep. Day followed day and night followed night, until Dany knew she could not endure a moment longer. She would kill herself rather than go on, she decided one night. So let's speak bluntly about what is happening here. Daenerys is being sexually assaulted by Cal Drogo every single night in such a disrespectful and animalistic fashion that he leaves her destroyed both mentally and physically, to the point that she contemplates taking her own life in order to avoid the pain. So I guess the quote-unquote consent on their wedding night was just a one-time thing. Now, with all that being said, let's address the elephant in the room regarding their relationship that everyone likes to bring up. That being the quote-unquote love that Daenerys had for him. And I do not believe Daenerys truly loved him. First things first, we need to define Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is defined as a psychological coping mechanism that can develop in victims of captivity or abuse, causing them to identify with and develop positive feelings toward their captors or abusers. And this definition partially explains Daenerys' feelings for Cal Drogo. But it's not the full story. Daenerys definitely does develop Stockholm Syndrome with Cal Drogo, but that's the easier of the two conclusions to draw. The more complex one is that Daenerys didn't grow to love Cal Drogo, but instead she grew to love the power that she gained by being with him. Daenerys spends her entire childhood in the first 3 chapters of Book 1 having absolutely no power or agency in her own story. She's abused and controlled by her brother, by the world, and by the game itself. But in marrying Cal Drogo and becoming a Khaleesi, she gains power and agency that she never had before. Daenerys doesn't love Cal Drogo. She loves the fact that she feels empowered when she's with him, which is part of the reason that his death is so terrifying for her in the first place. Jorah himself says that once Cal Drogo dies, Daenerys' best case scenario is becoming a member of the Dush Khaleen and being made to stay in one spot for the rest of her life. And at worst, she will be assaulted and killed. So when Drogo is dying, part of the reason that Daenerys is so desperate to save him is because without him, she subconsciously believes that she will go back to being that scared little girl at the start of the story, instead of the powerful Khaleesi that she has become. She is scared to lose agency in her own story. She does not love him. Something that she has to retake in Daenerys 10 by walking into the pyre. So Daenerys did not love Cal Drogo. She had a twisted, abusive, and complex relationship with a man 20 years older than her that she confuses for love because she is a child who's never experienced proper love before, when it is instead love for the power he provides, not the man himself. So to quickly sum up my points, Khal Drogo is an abusive husband, a slaver, a murderer, and a man who sexually assaults a 13-year-old girl and fully supports and backs the idea of conquest ending in pillaging and assaulting innocent women and children. So yeah, no amount of Jason Momoa handsomeness or Stockholm Syndrome love is going to make me overlook how much of a despicable monster this man truly is.